My grandma invited us for a weekend stay, but my mom and sister refused. Now I'm inheriting the family business and they're begging for forgiveness. Hi, so I'm 17 female, and I'm currently living with my grandmother 70 female because of a really bad situation that I'm in with my mother 47 female and sister 19. My father recently passed away after a long battle with osteosarcoma, and 6 months ago, he succumbed to his disease. It wasn't anything unexpected. We had seen this coming, and we were prepared for it. Nevertheless, it still hurts. You don't ever feel okay about losing a parent. I don't think I ever will feel fine about it, but I'm dealing with it. The only consolation that I have is that he is in a better place now and is not suffering anymore, like he had been for the past 4 years. My mother was really upset about it for the first couple of weeks, but this time she's getting over it, and I'm happy for her. This is the same case with my sister, but I think I'm the one who is taking it the hardest. He was my favorite person in the world, and it still feels weird that he's not going to be around anymore. The past 6 months have been really upsetting for me in my personal life, but I have had to go on since I'm in my senior year of high school, and I've also started applying to colleges and stuff. So things are pretty stressful for me right now, and I don't have time to sit and grieve. I'll do it once I get into my choice, the one that my father had wanted me to go to. I'm working really hard for it, so I have my fingers crossed. Anyway, this is more about my grandmother, so I'll get to that now. For context, my father was very close to his mother, and I'm also pretty close to my grandma. However, that's not the case with my mom and my sister. My mother has never really gotten along well with my grandmother for reasons that I don't know, and my sister is pretty much a second version of my mother. So she does not get along with my grandma either, and doesn't seem to like her much. I have kept in touch with my grandma, but after the funeral, my mother did not bother to check up on my grandma. It was just me who seemed to care about her. I had believed that the tragedy would bring the family closer together, but that did not happen. My father's death pretty much gave my mother and my sister an excuse never to speak to my grandma again, and they cut her out of their lives. I don't know why they did that or why they did not like her because, as far as I was concerned, she had always been very nice to us and our family. She had always been nice to my mom and my sister as well, even though they never bothered to hide their disdain for her. Even when they would be visiting her house, they would act really weird and arrogant and make it awkward for everybody else as well. My parents had thought about it many times, but at one point, my father had just given up because he knew that he could not change this. I know that there must have been some reason behind this behavior, but nobody ever told me anything about it. And I did not feel brave enough to ask my mother why she did not like my grandma, since this seemed to be a bit of a sensitive topic for her. But my grandma, to me, is really nice, and I love her. She's also a really inspirational woman, and I'm proud to be her granddaughter. 6 months have passed since my father's death, and I have kept in touch with her, and I'm the only one who has, since my mother doesn't speak to her, neither does my sister. The rest of the family got really busy after a couple of weeks. Besides, she could not expect them to drop everything for her and be there for her emotions all the time either, since they were not our immediate family. But we had been there for each other, and I would visit her every weekend, up until a couple of weeks ago, since that's when my finals started. They got over last week, and coincidentally, my sister also came back home from college after her finals a couple of days after that. So since everybody was at home, my grandmother invited us all over to her place for a weekend stay, and I was in, obviously. I tried to convince my mother and my sister to give it a chance, but what they said to me really put me off, and I still haven't been able to get it out of my head because it was just so disgusting. I was trying to tell my mom that it would be fine and that we should try to spend some more time as a family since that's what my father would have wanted. And my mother got really annoyed and told me that if I wanted to have a relationship with my grandma, I was free to do so, but now that my father was gone, she had no incentive to still keep in touch with that old hag and was cutting her off on purpose. And my sister seemed to agree with that sentiment as well. I thought that it was really disrespectful and mean to say because my grandma had always been nice to the two of them. And it was they who had gone out of their way to be rude to her in her own home. Regardless of that, she would still invite them to every event, over and over again. I don't think she was asking for much. It was just one weekend, and they did not have much going on either. It wouldn't cost anything to give it a chance and just be nice, but that's what they had to say about it. So, as usual, I went alone to visit my grandmother, and she seemed kind of upset by the fact that my mother and sister had not bothered to show up, but I think she expected it. But something happened that I absolutely had not been expecting, and that was that she told me she had invited all three of us, and not just me, because she had an important thing to tell us. So, she told me that now that my father was gone, she had to think of somebody to take over the company. My father had been working from home when things got too bad and he got too sick to go out, but for the last couple of months, we had no idea how things were. going at the company because we were so busy getting worried about my father's health. We barely had any time to worry about any of that. We had just assumed that he had somebody taking care of things, and somebody was keeping it going when he was not around, and if not that, we knew that my grandmother would handle it, so we did not worry about that. It's a family business, and we mainly deal in electronics. We are retailers, and not manufacturers. My great-grandfather started it, and then it has been continued by my grandfather and then my father. But my sister is still in college, and I haven't even graduated from high school yet, so obviously neither of us could take over yet. The only person who was qualified to take over would be my mother. She works in a bank right now, but I think she would have done a good job here as well. However, since she hadn't even bothered to show up for that weekend stay at my grandmother's place, she had been disqualified anyway, and she wasn't even going to count my sister in since she was underage and, like I said, a miniature version of my mother. That just left me, but I was not even 18 yet, and even then, I had a long way to go before I was ready to take over such a huge responsibility. But eventually, she told me that she was going to leave the company to me. For now, she was running it with my granduncle, my grandma's cousin. But even he was getting old and could not take the responsibility for long. He was already in his mid-60s and had been planning to retire, but then my dad got diagnosed, and he had to put everything off. The best he could do was a couple more years, but after that, he would be out. My grandmother desperately wanted to keep the business within the family, so she asked me if I would be willing to take on the opportunity. She told me that she knew I had been planning to go to business school anyway, since in the long run, I had been planning to take over the company after my father. I just hadn't expected him to go away so soon. That had never been part of the plan. But yes, I did want to run the company. So she asked me if I would be up for the challenge, and I didn't even have to think twice before I said yes. Then she told me that for the next couple of years she would take care of everything and would start grooming me to take over after I graduated. I won't even have to worry about my college tuition since my grandmother has promised me that she's going to take care of all of it. After I had accepted it, the first thing that she did was tell my granduncle that I was going to take over, and he just had to wait it out for a couple more years. But once I was done with business school, I would be taking over. They would supervise me for a couple of years, but once I had proved my mettle, I would be on my own. And I had faith in myself. I know that I can do this. I'm very confident about it, so I did not feel the need to hesitate or think twice about this decision. Now, I think where things went wrong was when I decided to call my mother up and tell her about this. I did not actually intend to gloat. I just wanted to let them know that they had made a mistake by rejecting my grandma and her invitation. I wanted them to know that their arrogance was taking them down. When I told my mom about it, she refused to believe me at first, but then I told her that I was serious. And then she started yelling at me and said that I had no right to gloat like this, and it was pretty petty of me to do so. I tried to tell her I was not trying to gloat. I was just trying to tell her that if she had been kinder, then this golden opportunity would have come to her instead. Or maybe to my sister, since she was also a finance major and would have had a job ready and waiting for her after she graduated. But now that seems unlikely since my grandma has made up her mind and is pretty upset about the way that she was snubbed when I had shown up alone at her house. My grandma had been pretty disappointed, and after we had our little discussion and I accepted her offer, she told me that now she had no incentive to keep in touch with my mother either. She told me that for so many years she had put up with her arrogant behavior purely out of love for my father, but after her son's death, my mother had not bothered to check up on her even once, not even as an obligation. That day was the limit and peak of her arrogance, so she did not feel the need to keep in touch or invite her over for anything ever again, and I could understand where she was coming from. I had seen the way that my mother and sister behaved around her, and if I was in her place, I don't think I would have been able to keep my calm for that long either. So I personally don't think that I did anything wrong by telling my mother that if she had been kinder, this opportunity could have been hers. But they had just cost themselves an opportunity to rise because of their terrible arrogance and attitude problems. I was supposed to go back 2 days after that once the weekend was over, but it's been 1 week and I'm still here. And that's because the day after my phone call to my mother, she and my sister showed up at my grandma's place with tears in their eyes, begging for forgiveness. I'm not even exaggerating right now, that's exactly how they showed up. We were both pretty surprised to see them here. And then my mother told my grandma that if she had known that this is the reason why she had been inviting them, she wouldn't have rejected the invitation. I can tell you that was really the wrong thing to say. She probably should have started off by apologizing for her behavior for the past couple of months and all her life since she has never behaved nicely with my grandma. But instead of apologizing, she made it very obvious to my grandma that the only reason she was here was not because she was genuinely and truly sorry about declining her invitation and behaving badly with her, but just because of the position and the family business that she so badly wanted to be a part of. It was disgustingly obvious what she was trying to do, and my grandma was not going to tolerate that BS. So she cut her off in the middle of her rant and told her that she could go home because she was genuinely just not interested in anything that my mother had to say. Since there was no apology, no explanation for her behavior, she had no interest in entertaining this kind of crap either. My grandma really let her have it and told her that she was acting pathetic, and it was not surprising to her either, since this is exactly the kind of behavior that she had expected from her. She told her that she had put up with her arrogant behavior for years on end just because of her son, and had even tried to give her a chance at redemption by inviting her that weekend because she knew that my father would have wanted it. But my mother had proven to her that she was not worthy of a second chance, and so she would go back home and cry in her house instead of wasting our time. And then she shut the door in her face. I was really proud of my grandmother, and I thought that she did the right thing by standing up for herself. Throughout their conversation, I had been standing in the room, but I did not intervene, not even when my mother had the door slammed in her face. The reason that I did not intervene was very simple. I did not think that there was anything wrong that was going on, so I did not feel the need to stand up for my mother. But after that, my mother and sister started blaming me for all of this and thinking that I should have stood up for them. We have been arguing about it back and forth for a couple of days now, and I haven't been able to go back home. Even though I need to bring a lot of things over from their place to mine, since now I have decided I'm going to continue living with my grandmother. But they think that I'm being unfair and selfish and just keep fighting with me. They believe that now that I know that my future is sorted out, I'm going to abandon them, and they think that I am showing my true colors now. It's so frustrating. I don't even know how to feel about any of this. AIT for not going back home to my mother and sister after my grandma told me that I was going to inherit the family business? Update 1. Hi, according to you guys, I should have cut my mother and sister off and not made that phone call in the first place. I kind of agree with you guys, that would have saved me a lot of trouble. But anyway, I can still do that now, and I'm doing that. It's been really getting into my head, the way they've been acting, since they are the only family apart from my grandmother that I have left. So I was still trying to keep in touch and make things right with them, but I don't think I can make it work because they are making sure that I feel guilty about things that I'm not even responsible for. I have blocked them so they cannot call me or text me anymore. I'm just done with both of them. They had the chance to fix everything, but they did not do so, neither with my grandmother nor with me, and that's fine. I think that now they should really just face the consequences of their own behavior and actions, instead of trying to blame it on me. I know that I'm not the one at fault in this situation. No matter how hard they try to convince themselves, they can't convince me of it anymore. I'm out of that house, and I'm sure that my father wouldn't have wanted this to happen either, but it is what it is. Update 2. So I blocked my mother and sister a couple of days ago, and just as I had expected, they really did not like that. I knew that they wouldn't approve of my behavior either, but I had to do it. They were really getting on my nerves. They just kept fighting with me even when I was being nice to them, so how could I not block them? I didn't have any other option. Anyway, I think they found out that I blocked them yesterday, and there was a huge uproar from their end over this, and they were very upset about it. And since they couldn't express that to me through calls or texts since they were blocked, they chose to make a post about it. I don't know what they were hoping to achieve with that post, but it was really annoying because they are going overboard and painting themselves as the victims here when literally everybody knows that they are definitely not the victims. They even accused me of something that I couldn't even have imagined, even if I had wanted to do that to them. Because they did not have anything else to use against me, they had to just come up with a theory and run along with it, pretending that it was true. They posted the entire story of what had happened and how they came about to be blocked, but obviously, they painted me to be the villain and themselves to be the victims and put everything in such a way that people would consider me the bad guy. They accused me of keeping the purpose of my visit to my grandmother secret on purpose so that they would decline the invitation and lose this golden opportunity. They said that apparently I knew exactly why my grandmother had invited the three of us to her house, but I knew that they would not accept the invitation if I did not tell them why she had invited us. My mother did not have a good relationship with my grandma, and I used that to my advantage to hog this opportunity for myself and further ruin her relationship with her mother-in-law. All of that is a blatant lie, and I think the people reading this know the truth so far. I don't know what people are feeling about it because I haven't been able to read the comments on that post. I even know about that post because one of my relatives sent it to me and asked me what was going on. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I want to tell them to take it down, but for that, I will have to unblock them first. I haven't even talked to my grandma about it because she's already pretty upset after the passing of her son, and I don't want to create more trouble for her. So I've been dealing with all of this on my own for now. I don't want to make her even more sad and disturbed than she already is with these petty fights. Update 3. Hi, I spoke to a couple of my friends about this, and they said that I should confront my mom and my sister. So that's what I did. I unblocked them, and I asked them what that post was even for since I was not even trying to fight with them, but they kept spreading lies about me, and it was really getting on my nerves. My sister did not reply to me, but my mother got back to me, saying that she had to do this because she knew that there was at least some truth in what she was saying, and people needed to know how I really was as a person. Since I constantly pretended to be nice and sweet, but in reality that's not the truth, and I am as far from sweet as can be, as I stole a fortune from them. I really lost my cool at that point because her behavior was completely unreasonable, and I think she was the one who had major issues, not me. I really am as sweet as I behave, but she just keeps pushing me, and I'm not going to take that. So I told her, or rather yelled at her, and said that I had already lost a father, and I was not scared of losing another parent. I told her that she had screwed her life up with her bad attitude. She couldn't just blame it on me and pretend that that was the reality of the situation. She was the one who had always had issues with my grandma, and that's why she had rejected the invitation. I even jogged her memory and reminded her of the exact words that she had used, and told her that she was the one who had called my grandma an old hag, and had said that now that my father was gone, she did not want to keep in touch with her anymore. So I don't think any of this was my fault. I really didn't know why my grandma had invited the three of us for a weekend stay, but if I had known about the purpose of the visit, I would have told them about it so they could have had a fair chance. But honestly, I really am glad that they didn't get that opportunity at all because they don't deserve it. They have no respect for the people in their lives and take everything for granted, so I think this should be a good lesson for them. Even while I was telling her all of this, she kept trying to interrupt me and fight with me, and that was agitating me even more. So she kept saying things, and I kept yelling at her in return, and the situation only kept getting worse and worse. And I think at some point I must have gotten loud enough for my grandma to hear, so she came into my room to check out what was going on, and when she saw me arguing on the phone with my mom, she decided to grab the phone and hang up. And she told me not to waste my energy speaking to her, and then left the room, which I think was a good call because I was getting really upset, and it was completely unnecessary. I can't change her. I can't force her to see my point of view and consider it. She's just going to be the same narcissistic person who only cares about herself, and I can't do anything about it. It's pointless for me to waste my energy arguing with her, so now I'm just trying to calm down and deal with my emotions right now. Update 4. Okay, a lot of you were asking me exactly why my mother and my grandma don't get along, or rather why my mother doesn't like my grandma, and I honestly didn't know. I didn't have an answer to that, so I had been avoiding those questions. But today, I finally decided to find out because I think it's about time that I get to know about these things. They definitely do concern me, and I am part of the family. I deserve to know. I obviously couldn't ask my mother about it, not after the fight we had on the phone call today. So I decided to ask the only other person who would have an inkling as to why this was the case. So I approached my grandmother, and I asked her very straightforwardly why my mother didn't get along with her. She seemed a little taken aback by that question, probably because she hadn't seen it coming after so long. But she did not shy away from telling me the truth, and I finally have an answer to your questions now. So apparently, before my parents got married, my mother had been talking about quitting her job so she could be a stay-at-home wife. My grandmother had put her foot down and said that she was not going to allow that to happen because of a couple of reasons. The first one is the most practical reason, that my dad already had a full-time housekeeper working for him from before he had even started dating my mom, so there was no point in her staying at home and doing nothing. The second reason was that she knew that if my mother decided to stay at home for a while, she would just never end up going back to work. And that would mean that she would be relying on my dad's income for the rest of the duration of their marriage. She could not let that happen because that would just mean that my mom was marrying my dad for his money. This is why she put her foot down, and my grandma told my dad that she would not allow her daughter-in-law to sit at home and do nothing. She had to be a working woman. And if my mother still chose to get married to my dad, then she would know for sure that my mother was not just with my dad for the money. Luckily, my mother did marry my dad, in spite of the fact that she would not be allowed to quit her job like she had wanted to. My grandma was pleased with what had happened, but since then, my mother hasn't liked my grandma because she doubted her character. I honestly don't know how to feel about this. I do think that it might have been insulting for my mother to have somebody cast a bias on how much she loved my father, and the reason why she was with him. But then I also can't blame my grandma for doubting her intentions, since they belong to a pretty financially well-off family, so I'm kind of torn between the two of them. But, well, it is what it is because I honestly don't know who's right and who's wrong, but I know that right now my grandma is the best for me. So, that's all I have to say about this. Update 5. Hey, so it has been a couple of weeks since I last spoke to my mother. We had that really bad fight on the phone, and we have not spoken to each other since. From what I know, she has taken down that post that she had made, and along with that, she has also taken down any other photos that she had of me on all of her social media accounts. She's basically pretending that she has only one daughter and it's hurtful, but I have to deal with it. This is the way that I have chosen for myself, and I'm going to stick to it. I also got accepted into the business school that I had applied to, the one that my dad wanted me to go to. And I can't tell you how happy I am about it. I can't put it into words, really. When I read that acceptance email, I thought I screamed loud enough for the state to hear me. My grandmother is thrilled, but not more than me. I'm not just happy that I am going to such a great institution, but mostly I'm also happy that I was able to live up to the promise that I had made to my father. I've been studying really hard for the past couple of months, and it feels like all my hard work has paid off. And it will continue to pay off in the years when I take over my dad's business and do what he had meant for me to do.